All right, let's talk about the data point styling options. So currently the Scatter Pro Visual supports two different options for when you want to style the data points. There's an option of going with defaults, meaning that you customize every single data point together as a single group, or the other option is grouping them and customizing them individually. Now first, let's take a look at the default option. So if you go into the formatting options and open up data points default, everything you do here is going to affect every single data point within the scatter plot. The only exception is going to be, like I said, if you are using another type of grouping. So unless you are doing that, what you can do under the defaults tab is, for example, define the shape. So for example, dynamic means that you're actually defining the shapes through the field. So if we go to the fields list, you can see right here, marker shape. So that's what you use here whenever you are defining shapes through the data. If you're not defining shapes through the data, make sure that you use either auto, or in this case, for example, you can choose circle. Right? So you're now saying that every single data point is going to be a circle. So this allows you to customize this on different approaches. On top of that, if you have also provided some images, you can enable or disable them. That's completely up to you. Choose different cropping options for the image itself. And the similar principle on how you had the marker shapes works also for the color mode. So by default, it's going to be sitting on auto, meaning that the colors are going to be assigned based on the categorization of the legend field. So the more categories you have under legends, the more different colors you're going to see here. If you want to have just a fixed color for everything, switch it to fixed. If you want to define the colors dynamically through the data, again, make sure you switch this to dynamic. And then afterwards in the fields list, make sure you have provided a color. So that's the most important part here. Now, going forward, a few other things is you can, of course, play around with the opacity of the data points. For example, are they transparent, non-transparent, or semi-transparent? You can choose the default colors if it's needed. And of course, you can also enable or disable outlines. Completely up to you on how you want to style these data points. For the outlines, you can adjust the colors, the thickness of the outline, the opacity of it, and so forth. Few interesting settings that we have here is, for example, min visible and max visible size. So what that means is, for example, for certain details within the data point, like images and so forth, unless you have reached a certain level of zoom, you're not going to be displaying them. For example, you can see right here, I zoomed out, so the images are not displayed. This saves performance. So if I zoom in a little bit, you can see images are starting to showcase. Same thing goes also for labels. Values and different other things to make sure that the chart works as fast as possible. Because let's be honest, if you're going to have like 100 different data points and they're going to be sitting right on top of each other, there's no real benefit of having an image on top of it, a value label, a category label, and so forth. So this is something that allows you to use the visual a lot more efficiently. Now, once we have those set up, if you also have some value labels, you can choose whether they're going to be displayed inside or outside. Not a great example here on purpose. For example, currently the values are inside in the data point itself. You can see they're not visible whatsoever. So I can say, hey, the value labels are actually going to be sitting outside. So you can play around with the value labels plus the category name labels. So whether they're placed inside, outside, whether you want to have some background for them or not. So this allows you to make sure that just all the information that you have here is clearly visible and readable. On top of that, different value types, whether it's a numeric or a percentage, display units, the decimals again. And one of the things that we have covered previously is, for example, this one, use category as label. So what this means is if in the data fields right here, categories, you have added something, the chart allows you to say that, hey, I want to use the name of that category as a label or a name for the data point. So for example, when I enable it, you can see it added also the name for it right here. So it's, again, something you can choose whether you want to use or not. If the category labels are not what you want to use, you can use a different field called just label and provide whatever information you want within that. On top of that, we also have this allow overlapping, which means that for certain cases where you have nodes close together, for example, I'm going to drill down into one of them, you allow the visual to have visual overlap or not. If you don't allow it, it's going to try to split them apart a little bit and not showcase that sort of overlap there. So make sure you play around with the default values, and just remember, if you want to customize something specifically on top of things, you have the grouping option, which we're going to cover in a separate video.